Folks, as they always say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And like Sophie said, with our hilarious photos from last week, it always is. Sophie and I, McGarvin, unfortunately, look, life got in the way. Some stuff came up, so he's not here. So it's her and I holding down the fort. But Miss Sophie Weller, how are we doing today?
I'm good. How about you?
You know what? I can't complain. It's like that awkward part between like free agency and the draft. But an NFL favorite came up today, and it is the all glorious coach's photo as we see here in Orlando, Florida. It's like the most group of middle-aged, socially awkward men you could have in one photo.
And the Patriots are represented for once.
I know, right? I love how he's like right next to Robert Saleh as well.
Yeah, I know. It's like perfect.
Yeah. I also love too how it's like everyone next to like Saleh, like him, Dan Quinn, and Brian Daboll look like they're undercover cops in like a drug ring or something like that.
It is really the funniest photo.
It is because, like I say, football, like, because football guys really like look these football coaches like it's one of those things they know what they're doing when they're doing something, but you get them out of their element. It's like the most socially awkward thing in the world that you could see. Like when in the sense, when you're asking, hey, stand there and take a picture, and it's just like when we were kids in school, like you have to sit like awkwardly still, and they clearly don't want to be there taking the photo.
Yeah, I hated picture day.
Didn't we all? But that's the one thing with this whole owners meeting that I feel like not a lot of football people get the feel on. And when I say football people, I mean fans. Obviously, football people like you and I know the importance of these meetings because a lot of the stuff that you're going to probably end up seeing on the field come September and October gets decided upon this week. Rule changes. And the big one too that I'm the proponent of is the trade deadline moving back, which was first brought
Yes,
up by the Cleveland Browns.
I agree with the trade deadline. I'm also kind of curious to see what they do about the hip drop tackle. Um, I definitely have mixed feelings about that one because I'm all for like making the game safe for players and all that, but I don't know if this is maybe taking it a step too far just because this has been like a part of the game for so long. And also what like comes to my mind immediately is like when Jabril Peppers talked to the media about this moment during like this possibility during the season, he was like not for it at all. If I remember correctly, he was just like, you're taking football, it's football. It's a part of the game. It's a physical game. Here it is. So that's kind of why I have mixed feelings about it is like, I can have all these opinions myself, but I'm not the one out there like putting my body on the line and playing. If, these guys are saying like, yeah, it's a part of the game, then like, where am I to stand in their way?
So the way I look at with this as is I feel like you see this a lot of the times. Like even though like for example, March Madness is in the back right now. There's rumors of expansion. Obviously, college football expansion is something where they did overkill in. I feel like the NFL with a lot of these rules, it's the same sort of thing. Like we've seen it with roughing the passer, where some quarterbacks know, mainly Josh Allen, that if you know what move your body a certain way or you do certain things, you're going to get flagged for it. And like all the fans know what you're doing, but the refs just see what happens in the moment.
Yeah.
So with something like the hip drop tackle, look, I'm all for one for making the game safer. I played high school football, obviously never professionally, but like I still know the nuances of the game. And hell, that's why I'm here with this podcast talking to you right now. But I feel like doing the 15-yard penalty, it's just kind of like overkilling the situation. Instead, just teach the players to do a safer version of the hip drop tackle.
Agreed.
Teach them, like, show, hey, instead of doing this, which ended Ramondre Stevenson's season, you can do this. Hip drop tackle, like, look, it's what made Dak's ankle bend sideways back in 2020 against the Giants. And also I'd say this too, don't do a 15-yard penalty. That's just like, it's like
Yeah.
overkill, it's like I know there's I don't want to get too political, but it's like in a small crime in America, like they decide to throw the book at the person and give them like 10 to 15 years. It's the same sort of thing where do a 5-year penalty, and if you're still having the problem with the same players still doing it, like or even better idea. In sportsmanlike conduct, first time you get a warning, second time you're gone. Do that. So we'll tell players, hey, don't tackle a certain way. Tackle a safer way that's going to benefit you and the person you're tackling in the long run. Because at the end of the day, these guys are gladiators that will go out there and put their life on the line every single Sunday for my enjoyment and for your career.
And the other thing too with that is just, I saw this report also today that the NFL is maybe concerned about the lack of scoring, that it's like going down. But at the same time, I don't think that should come at the expense of the defense who
Yeah.
are just doing their jobs. Like, I get for people who might not be as into the game that, they're all for the scoring and it's more fun that way. But like for people like us and others who just, sit there and understand the nuances of like what it takes to play defense in those positions, making their jobs harder isn't fair to them. They work just as hard as, any wide receiver, running back, quarterback, all of that. Like they're where they are today because they earned it, but it's,
Yeah.
they shouldn't be penalized for playing defense over offense. And that's just kind of where I stand, where is that going to, yes, you want the players to be safe. You don't want these players getting injured 24/7 on a hip drop tackle. But like you said, if there's a way to do it safer or something like that, maybe that's the way to go about it rather than eliminating it altogether. And because it could, with what some of the players are saying, if they're not, the players are in favor of it, then go for it. If all the defensive players are like, yeah, I think it could make the game safer, then I'm totally taking myself out. But if they're the ones who are like, no, you're kind of taking a large part of us out of the game, then that's where something else needs to be happening rather than just eliminating it.
The main thing too, as well, is I don't want the NFL to cater to the fan that watches the one game a year.
Yes.
Like the people like us who are in the trenches who will, like, I literally tell people this. There's 5 months of the year. I just ask for my Sunday in peace. Right now on a Sunday night, look, I don't care. It is what it is. But I bring this up too because about a week ago I was out with my fiance, her best friend, and then her husband. We were out for dinner. He was telling me because he came to me for gambling advice prior to the Super Bowl, and then we're there, and then him and I were talking for a bit. He's like, "Yeah, the game was kind of boring," and then I'm like, it just made me spark that conversation where I'm like, for those people, the ones that found the Super Bowl boring, the ones that like don't see the firework games. I feel like ever since that Bills Chiefs game, there's been a yearning for offense to where everyone's and perfect example too. Whenever those two teams play, they haven't created the same fireworks since. They make this game seem like it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but in reality, look, it just you can have a good thing once, but it's really hard to do a good thing twice. That's why, and we're going to talk about this, the Dynasty was such a special thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, with that comment about the one game a year person, because when they tune in the Super Bowl and instead of seeing a 25-22 game, you're getting last year, which was 38-35, which, do we love offense? Yes, but at the same time, too, a true football connoisseur has the appreciation for the defense.
Yeah.
That's why so many Patriots fans were ecstatic when DeMarcus Covington got the DC job, when Dante Hightower got brought in, because they know he can teach this defense a lot with a young linebacking core. And I don't want to see them ruin that as well.
Yeah, and that was the thing, too. It's, I think, when people who don't know the team as well hear the name like DeMarcus Covington, like for us, we know all about him. We knew we really, like, he was the top of everyone's list for defensive coordinator just from what we've been hearing. But I was getting questions from maybe some of my friends who only like kind of are into football because they want to talk to me because it's literally what I do for a living. And I had to explain to them, like, they were like, oh, who's this guy? Because, for so long, the big, coordinators in here were Matt Patricia or Josh McDaniels, which, everyone knew.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's some of these younger guys getting the opportunity, and that's not, and, they deserve those opportunities, but not everyone understands that from the same level.
That's a great way to put it, too, because you look at that and you see, like, oh, why is this person in the position that they're in? Why did this guy get hired? And even with you now, it's a talk of, so Sophie, how is work today? So now they can go, I want to understand the nuances of the defense. I want to understand what kind of player KJ Osborne is, which is a shame that McGarvin's not here because I know he was head over heels when that signing happened.
I'm a big fan of that signing as well.
I want to go down a different avenue with that signing because it created an impression from certain fans I've seen on Twitter to where I tell people this, that Patriot fans have become fickle, and they're like, you don't have the right to be fickle. And I mean fickle in the sense that fans are super negative on the fan base. And someone tweeted out about the signing saying, oh, it's great to know they're not competitive this year, to where I just want to tell people, any sensible Patriots fans not going to tell you this team's not going to be competitive this year.
Yeah.
Like, we know that, look, rebuilding in the NFL is a long-term process. I just feel like with a month to go before the draft, everyone's just so fixated now on, like, oh, this team gets a quarterback, they're good to go. Which, like I said, I love Houston. I just don't love how the perception they've made now to where everyone thinks, hey, you just go get your quarterback and you're good to go, when in reality, you know what I mean? You can and you can't. I just don't want to – I just want to tell Patriots fans this. I don't want them to go into the season with high hopes and then have their hopes shattered when the team ends up only being a 6-11 or a 7-10 or maybe even 5. My whole thing is get to that 5th win, and I can at least say this year is better than last year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The only thing that I'm not so sure about is this thing that like the Texans have put this idea of like a top quarterback. Just because I can't remember the exact number, but my dad had a similar argument a few weeks ago about this. How he was like, well, how many of these like first round quarterbacks have really done well in the league? And we went, we pulled up a list, we went through it, and it was so
Not
many.
high.
It was actually a decent amount, I
Oh,
thought. Maybe my memory is playing a trick on me, but from what I remember, it wasn't too bad because he wasn't totally sold on the idea that the Patriots should go quarterback either. How I feel is looking at the next class of quarterbacks, I think it would be a major mistake not to draft one even to give away that third overall pick. Because my issue with giving that away, especially to a team with a lower pick, is JJ McCarthy totally rose his draft stock with Pro Day. He's now expected. He's won't even last top 10. He's gonna. I think it was like maybe 6. Was it the Giants pick? Are they 6 that
yeah.
everyone's they're thinking they're probably gonna go JJ McCarthy? Like he's gonna be off the board quickly. If you have that opportunity to have Jaden Daniels or Drake May, either or, because I think they're both very talented in their own respects and can bring a lot to any team they're on. I don't see why you don't go for it.
That's my main thing too. I feel like a lot of people too are kind of, how do I say this, PTSD'd from the Belichick era, where you're going to be used to a pick that's like either, because like the only Belichick picks in recent memory that have made sense is Mac, which look, we talked about this last time. We know Mac didn't work out, but at the time it was the pick to make. 2020, excuse me. I like the pick. Was it the right time though? I don't think so. You probably could have got someone better. Mm-hmm. And then last year was like a slam dunk. Yes, you turn in the ticket for Gonzalez. This year, I feel like the Patriots are going to do a lot of sensical things in the draft, and the fan base is going to kind of awaken and go like, oh, hey, that makes sense. Like, oh, hey, we went and got a risk. Because the big question for me is more than the quarterback, because like I don't see them trading out. I just don't see a world where it happens. If the class was like last year where there's only a couple of guys, like, where it's like Young and Stroud, and then there's kind of a fall off after that, then you go do it. I'm not discrediting Anthony Richardson. It's just the hype coming out. It was Stroud and Young, and then like they were here, Richardson was down here. Meanwhile, you have this year where all 3 of them are on the same level. I know Caleb Williams has that he's the next Mahomes hype, which let's stop it. Everyone, no, that's the thing that's special about Mahomes. There's not another player like him. But with this year,
it's that, but it's also like, let's see him on an NFL field. Like, let's see him in an NFL game. I don't always like hearing these, putting them up on the pedestal or these expectations coming out of the draft. It's like, once you come into the NFL, it's a clean slate. You are out of college. You are in a completely new environment and no longer are you going up against guys that are probably around your age. You're going up against guys who are 10, 12 years in the league. So it's
grown-ass men with family to feed.
Yes.
My big thing too is about that as well is, I'm going to say this right now, I'm really worried about Marvin Harrison Jr. going into the league because I feel like he did nothing at the combine. Hell, no one went to his pro day, which I have some stuff to talk to you about that because you were making your way around Holy Cross, Boston College, you and some other people I saw, Patriots Twitter, shout out Keegan, even too CFL people there as well because the CFL is having their combine this weekend in Winnipeg, which like I didn't go to. There's very select people. I don't think any media really go to it, but it's just this thing now with Marvin Harrison Jr. where I look at him and I feel like he's just doing this let the film speak for himself. And then you have next year's perspective where I don't know if you've seen this, but Deion Sanders is on this whole kick of if Shador doesn't like the team he's going to, we're going to pull an Eli, where I'm just like, you're already setting yourself up with these like crazy, like just expectations for him. That's another story for another day. My main thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. is I'm worried about the Kyle Pitts effect happening to him where, Pitts came in the league, oh, he's the next big thing. He's this, where I'm like, guys, tight ends need time to sizzle and marinate. It's like when people look at Travis Kelce and go, why wasn't he a first-round pick? And it's like, well, if you go back and watch his college film, the besides getting kicked off the team, wasn't this player that everyone expected. That's a beautiful thing about the draft more than anything. It's, besides taking your first-round picks, it's finding the Puka Nakuas. It's finding the Tom Brady's. It's finding
Julian
Edelman's of the world. It's about finding I go to the LA because they've done it so much lately. The Kyron Williams of the world. It's hell. Chris Jones wasn't a high value pick. Yeah. Now I know everyone goes, like, oh, but Patrick Mahomes first round. It's just like, yes, but no one at the time, not a lot of people knew or saw this guy has something to be really good potential. So that's where the draft is truly special. That's why I always say it. Thursday, it's great if you hit on your pick. If you can hit on a bunch on Friday and Saturday, that's the home run. And I know Belichick's been criticized about his drafting, but he's brought in a lot of good day 2 and day 3 talent the last, I would say, ever since the draft went from the 2020s to even 2023. So look at the last few years. Kyle Duggar, Anefri Jennings, Michael Wenu, Christian Barmore, Ramondre Stevenson.
I'm throwing Demario Douglas right in there.
Demario Douglas. This is going to be another one, Bryce Behringer as well. And even 2022, Tyquan Thornton looks like he's put in work this offseason. 2 other examples I want to give because I'm very high on them going into this year is Keon White and Marte Mapu. So when you see how good you can draft, like we say, the day 1 pick, it's fun. It's those day 2 and day 3 picks where GMs really solidify their legacies, to be honest with you.
And I definitely think, like, Belichick is criticized, and some of it is warranted. I'm not going to sit here and be like, he's the best drafter of all time, never needed a GM. Like, no. There were plenty of drafts where a GM could have definitely been helpful in that case. But I do think that saying, he's one of the worst or something like that isn't exactly fair to him, considering the talent he's brought in with these later round draft picks. I mean, he's brought some guys in, and he's, like you said, he's pretty solid on day 2, day 3 at picking these guys who maybe were like not as well known in college, which is always the guys I almost prefer. I think because it's less expectations, but more to prove.
Exactly. And that's how, sorry to cut you off, but that's how I even look at this year's free agency class that they brought in. The guy, and I'll say this too for everyone saying, oh, they didn't go out and get this player. Yes, but re-signing Hunter Henry, there's your tight end 1. Re-signing Kendrick Bourne, that's a locker room glue guy. Everyone that's like, oh, they didn't go and get this person. Yeah, but you know what? For as much as the Calvin Ridley thing stung, and even to I don't even want to say the L'Jarius Sneed thing, just because you have to pay him all that money when you really need depth.
Sneed wasn't happening. They were just calling about him. Like I don't think that was ever real thing. That was like, and this is my opinion. I'm not. This is not like from anyone, but it's just and when I saw the Patriots name on that report, it was like my guess is they maybe called a few times to be like, hey, what are you asking for him? But it was like,
It's like when you go to a restaurant, you're like, hey, how's the fish in this? And they're like, the fish is okay. I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not saying they didn't want L'Jarius Sneed. It's just that like similar logic standpoint of like, they weren't really invested on it. It was more just doing due diligence and calling. But that's my thing with the Patriots this year too now is building a culture. There's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be pissed off about what Elliot Wolf is doing within the building. Yeah. But if I'm not saying long-term success is winning another Super Bowl, if they can get number 7 in the next 15 to 20 years, I'd be more than ecstatic. I say that just because I don't want to be – because with football fandom, you have to be realistic because right now is that time where all 32 teams have a shine of hope when in reality I would give maybe a maximum of 5 teams a glimmer of hope to win, which is Kansas City, obviously. I still put San Francisco in there. Yeah. I don't know his name, but your boyfriend's wonderful team, the Baltimore Ravens, and probably one of, I don't know, Detroit probably Detroit. And then
I'm going to throw Philly in there. I think what Philly's done this offseason, I'm not mad at. I think they could be a sneaky good pick going in.
I know it's just for me, the way that they fell down and the whole, it's more the reports of Sirianni not basically mentally losing himself without Dom on the sidelines was a huge red flag for me.
I hear you.
The one thing I'll say this too, because I don't know I know obviously, look, you covered Hockey East. You went to a Bruins game with your dad for his birthday a few months ago. I know you're not a big Bruins. I don't know how big of a Bruins fan you are. I'm a
good Bruins fan.
I figure you're a Boston girl through and through. So obviously with the Bruins, there's a team that the Bruins have tormented the last 10 years. I love to death. That team is still the Dallas Cowboys to me, where like this year, because I've been hearing about this, and there's actually Florio who brought it up. But Jerry Jones' version of All In, I think, is giving their fans that false hope, which they'll buy into every year. Being the top-rated games, always having a slew of not just primetime games, because I feel like everyone looks at the primetime slate, but having that 4:30 Thanksgiving slot when all eyes are on you. And having multiple 425, which in my opinion is the best time to play football, 425, because you get the 1 o'clock to yourself and then you just ease into prime time. So
As
that's
a reporter,
where
I'm not gonna lie though, I like the 1 o'clock. So I'm like home nice and early as a reporter, but I can't go from any other standpoint on that one.
no, that's fair. Like I liked the only Patriots game I've been to was a 1 o'clock kickoff, so I wasn't totally mad about that.
Mhm.
But you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
just with
I'm
Dallas,
totally.
it's that perspective. There's a lot of teams where I'm like, you have to earn my trust. Like Buffalo's in that territory, which look, I know Buffalo's been in the playoffs, but eventually their fans have to get past the, oh, we're this.
Yeah.
Which Detroit's doing a very good job of not realizing, hey, we're no longer this like cute little toy you look at. It's the hey, we have the target on our back. Excuse me, and people want to come into our building and beat us.
Mhm.
Um, I know some people are bullish on San Francisco still, which I'm just like, look, San Francisco's been to the championship game 3 years in a row. And then with some other teams, like, I don't know who else I look at so far where I'm like, you can do this because I'll be honest with you. I don't know if they're gonna go, I don't think they'll three-peat just because of how hard it is to three-peat. But when I look at the AFC West right now, I literally say to myself,
So insane.
Kansas, like no other team is like every other team I look at, I'm just like, okay, Denver hasn't done anything to go, wow. Vegas, for as much as I like Antonio Pierce, I feel like the nostalgia of it's going to wear off eventually when they have a
Yeah.
couple bad losses. And LA is going to, I'm going to keep this PG. They're going to screw around and they're going to find out, and it's either going to be a good thing or it's going to be a bad thing. I don't know what's going to happen there. So I feel like this is that year where, everyone's going to pick Casey to 3 especially too. Look, Hollywood Brown, I wasn't a huge fan of the signing, but I was like, there's a need filled. There's a need filled right there. And yeah, so when you look at the AFC, I look at Casey and Baltimore to go to the Super Bowl. Besides that, I want to say Cincinnati, but at the same time too, I want to segue to Cincinnati because they've secretly recruited 2 new former Patriots to their teams. Like I remember, Trent Brown was obviously very public, but I remember the Cincinnati person I follow tweeted about Gesicki, and I'm like best tight end. I'm like, wait, what? And then I Google his name. I'm like, yeah, Mike Gesicki, Cincinnati Bengal. I'm like, where did this come from?
And one thing I want to talk about with the Trent Brown signing that I think is so interesting was he did not hesitate to take a swipe at the Patriots in his introductory press conference. I mean, he laid it all out on the line, and it was along the lines of the fact that Ted Karras, another former Patriot, is with the Bengals, and I guess so he walked in the building and Ted was just there like in the hot tub. And how he said it was like in New England you never find that once you're allowed out, you're out. You're rushing out. You want to be out of that building. That was the atmosphere for, the 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
And the minute he got there, he's seeing people want to be around more and all that. So it was a major, and it's a major thing to say about New England in that moment. We all knew Trent Brown wasn't coming back. Things were not good
No.
this past season. He was not happy. They were not happy with him. It was just a recipe for disaster. But, I feel like you don't see that very often where even if it's bad, a player's going to go and just like, not trash, but not
Dirty
speak.
laundry.
Yeah, he's kind of airing all the dirty laundry, which was very interesting. And then another thing I want to go back to is the Kansas City three-peat thing. And maybe this is, this might be the segue into the dynasty we needed, but what I think about it is like, especially after watching the dynasty, was like, how many of these Patriots seasons did no one think they were going to win? They didn't have the team to win. They weren't the best team in the league, all this stuff, especially going into that last Super Bowl in 2019 against the Rams. Everyone was like, I don't know if they can do it this year. And I just think about that where it's like, it's so hard because that was this year for Kansas City, that it's every year going in, you're not going to be able to breathe until they're officially out.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that was the Patriots for 20 years was like, are you really going to put anything past them? Because you can't. They will find a way. Bill will find a way. Tom will find a way. Like that was what the Patriots did. That is what they were known for. And now that's totally changed. And we're seeing another dynasty forming right now. Patriots fans, you can deny it all you want. But right now there's another dynasty forming. And that is the Kansas City Chiefs.
There's one other thing I want to talk about before we segue into the dynasty because I feel like we both have a lot to say. But with the Chiefs, I've never been anti them. It's just more the people that are already going, oh, Pat's already surpassed Tom, or oh, he's already done this, or oh, he's already done that. Like it's just more that where I'm like, okay, guys, like simmer down. Because my thing with Pat is I want to see how he does once Reed goes, once Travis
Mhm.
Kelce goes, because we all know, and also I'll say this right now for anyone out there, I don't know if you're a big fantasy football person, but I feel like with Travis Kelce, his regular seasons aren't going to be
No.
as what they once were because I think they're going to tell him, hey, Travis, we need you for 3 or 4 games in January and February. That's where you could be a psycho. Like, hey, he's still going to be great. I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I'm just going to say I wouldn't be shocked if he's a player that's saving his best for when it matters most, which is
And
what
if
you
his
need in
personal
foot sports.
Yeah, if his personal life also keeps going the way it's going with, and now that his brother's out of the league, I do think retirement in the next year, 2, 3, whatever it is a very real possibility for him. I mean, his age definitely is a factor, and he looked very good this postseason. But I could definitely see it going in the direction that you were talking about, where it's definitely more of a rest during the regular season, and less plays that are centered around him. Maybe they bring in a rookie tight end or a veteran tight end into the room that's getting more of those opportunities rather than Kelsey 24/7.
They
Um,
did sign Irv Smith Jr., by the way.
yeah, that one was good. I did see that. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. And the other thing about the Brady Mahomes comparison, stop it. Let
Yes.
these guys be. You know, Brady can be Brady, Mahomes can be Mahomes. I get throwing stats on a board and being like, well, Brady did this and Mahomes did that. That's always going to be the case. But what Brady did, you can't compare it to what Mahomes is doing now.
Yeah.
They were playing, when Brady started, it was a totally different time in the NFL. When Brady ended, totally different time. Their careers they have earned the respect that for their careers to not be compared to one another.
1,000%.
And that is I think one of my biggest pet peeves with what people do is that they are so quick to be like, Mahomes threw, this many yards in a game and Brady couldn't do that against this team. It's like, no, but okay, that's one game you're comparing to one game. Let's go back on the 20 years or 20 some odd years Brady was in the league. And let's look at all that. It's just stop. That's all I can say. This is my long-winded PSA to just stop comparing them. They have earned the respect to not be compared to one another. They are their own people with their own careers, and they deserve that.
As I see a guy in a Boston Bruins Pasternak jersey at a March Madness game right now with Grand Canyon in Alabama. I don't want to ask you your feelings about the show because obviously I feel like you're going to love it. Netflix's new show Receiver coming out.
That one, yes. I thought we were talking
Yes.
about Dynasty. Sorry.
No, I just want to ask about this quickly just because I feel like we have to talk about the Dynasty. That and also mention the fact too, I had no idea that Gene Steratore was a basketball referee until 2 days ago because I kept seeing him on basketball, here's rules expert Gene. I'm like, he's a football guy. What are we doing? And I realized, oh crap, he ref for 24 years in college basketball. My more question about the Receivers show because I'm gonna love this one, but what are your thoughts on the cast of Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Amon-Ra St. Brown?
It's an insane cast, is all I can say. I was seeing.
I wonder if Kelsey was approached.
So I will bet money that Kelsey was approached. There is no way they aren't going to approach the biggest name in the NFL right now. But there was also no way Kelsey was going to do it because he knew why they wanted to approach him. They're not approaching him because they want to follow him as a receiver. They're approaching him to get Taylor Swift content. Sorry, not sorry. That's what they wanted. So there was never a chance he was going to do it. I remember seeing on my Twitter from all the Swifties being like, oh my gosh, why isn't Kelsey on this? It's like, guys, there was no chance that was going to happen. But I love the idea of doing these shows, especially with these prominent positions. And I love the cast that they have lined up because these are some of the biggest names who I feel like are, at least for some of them, are a little quieter off the field.
Yeah.
And what quarterback did was it gave you that insight into their lives outside of football. And that's also my favorite part of the game sometimes about being a reporter is that, they do so much on the field, but also they do so much not on the field.
They're human.
They're humans. They're not just, here for our entertainment 24/7. So I'm definitely excited for the Receiver show.
My big things is I'm interested to see is the Devontae Adams perspective, considering it's been a little rough with him. Also, the one thing I kind of want to take aim at with this is because, quarterback, I always is. You have the pinnacle, the guy trying to chase a championship, Mahomes. Yep. You have that middle card guy where he's trying to define his legacy in Cousins, and you have the guy looking for a second chance in Mariota. Yeah. Imagine if they had done that where it's just hey, here's, Justin Jefferson, best receiver in the league. Here's some like random player like throw out there
Yeah.
like Gabe Davis, there's Gabe Davis here. McGarvin, you're gonna love me for that one. And then here's like Tutu Atwell, for example, like guys
Yeah.
where it's like they're up and down. I feel like with the receiver dynamic, the one thing is I'm gonna say, for as much as I'm gonna love to see Kittle and Debo, I wish they would have done just one 49er and given someone else that chance, like gone to
Mhm.
another dynamic for the show. But all in all, as long as Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't talk a million times about all receivers taken before him in the draft, I feel like it's going to be good. I'm also interested to see Justin Jefferson because of him being hurt the entire year.
Yes.
You're the best player in the league. You were out for 2 months. You still went for 1,000 yards, which is psychotic. So I'm very excited to see it from that perspective.
My college
But
roommate had him on our fantasy team, and every week he was out. I got those texts.
Sophie, tell me something. What do you know?
I know, right? It was everyone thinks the inside scoop about fantasy. I was like, guys, I don't have that. I get the injury report at the same time you all get the injury reports or the inactive list. Like, I got nothing on that.
I can vouch for that for the CFL because with Toronto, like I'll get something like 2 minutes before it goes public. So it's
Yeah.
not like, yeah, we didn't have any sources or anything like this. So yeah. But transitioning to the dynasty, obviously you and I chatted about it a bit. I want to get right into things. Episode 9 may have been one of the more favorite in depths because I liked how they focused a lot on, it just wasn't jumping in from like, hey, yeah, 28-3, how it went to like, Alex Guerrero working on Tom, and then it was like all this other stuff. And then, eventually with 2017, they talk about the Super Bowl, like they talk the Malcolm Butler stuff, how it like got brought to light. I know last time I was kind of critical of Tom Curran and then I got pulled back. Your advice on him made me view him in a much different light for episodes 9 and 10, where I'm like, you know what, he's bringing a very good dynamic. I think I just saw it with my fan lens on of like, hey, here's what he's doing. But the one thing I really wish they would have focused on instead of just, yeah, another Super Bowl is the fact that it was a very tall task just to get to that Super Bowl in 2018. It wasn't like, hey, yeah, they just ran through everyone. No, there was some bumps in the road. There was the AFC Championship game where, look, one play could have made the difference between
Mm-hmm.
them not going to the Super Bowl that year and us getting Blake Bortles versus Nick Foles. So just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, I definitely had mixed reviews on this episode 9. I think some of the things they were, explained how we expected them to be explained.
Yeah.
But I also had some issues with it. And again, this is going along the lines of what everyone has been talking about, which is that Kraft and Brady were put on this pedestal for this whole documentary while Bill was just thrown to the ground with no care. It seems like. So the part that got me originally was this whole thing about the Trump rally, how it was the letter that Bill handed him. And what got me was it was a known fact that and they touched on it briefly, but Bill wasn't the only one in that building.
Nope.
In the ownership who was maybe supportive of that. Kraft was too, Brady was too, from what I remember. Maybe not, I think
he had the hat in his locker.
Yeah. Oh yes, yeah. So it was but that was maybe talked about once, but they had to do this whole segment on how Trump was handed a letter from Bill and all this. And it's regardless of your political beliefs, that was so biased. And you could tell from anything that was so biased because it wasn't I think it was Slater that was the one who was okay, the three men that lead our team are the ones he was the one who brought it back to everyone, him and McCourty, rather than but the way it was shown was just Bill. And then the second part was for way too long of that episode, it was just a complete commercial for TB12.
Yeah.
That could have been shortened a little bit. Listen, Brady did so much. I'm never going to take that away from him, and I appreciate everything with Alex Guerrero. I think they did a good job handling the situation with him. But that being said, it just almost started to feel like a commercial. It didn't feel for a little while, it wasn't like a documentary. It was okay, there are things that as fans, you could have taken that out and we could have heard from Rob Gronkowski a little bit more, Julian Edelman a little bit more, McCourty a little bit more. There were players that at least going in, I wanted to hear so much more from that just weren't there. They were maybe given 2 seconds on the film. So that's definitely where I felt some issues with that episode.
Yeah, like the Trump letter too, where they don't, because the thing is with that letter, I don't remember it, but if they were even shown the letter, because you know how last time we talked about the whole Robert Kraft and Vladimir Putin thing, which
yeah,
do we need that? No.
Nope.
I don't like too how there was an interview that came out with Devin McCourty and with Rodney Harrison where it's just like this whole, hey, like, we taped for 5 hours in New York. We did another 2 in Boston, and they only turned the negative stuff where, yeah, like 9 and 10 is the true Belichick funeral pieces where it was just, you know what, like, no, I'm done with this. I'm like, we're done with you, Bill. And then like how you have everything to do with that. So I'm just trying to find out the true dynamic of like where this was going, and then eventually, like I said, I just when I say I like the Alex Guerrero stuff, I just like learning about it. Did
Yeah,
we
no,
need
I
to see
agree.
him aggressively massaging Tom's legs? Probably not. I love Tom, but I did like there's certain things where I was just like, yeah, like we could have done without it. But then going into episode 10, when because I messaged you this after I watched the episode, and I was just like, I liked how they showed the whole Tom and Bill thing, but then it's just like, you know what? They didn't bother to invite Bill over. It was, hey, we're gonna call him. And
Mhm.
even the final episode too, where I love that they showed Tom's return, but then it was just, you know what? Yeah, after 24 years, we were done with Bill. Like, I feel like with Belichick, again, eventually, because he'll have his day in New England. We all know that.
Yeah. Oh,
Obviously, you look
deservedly so.
deservedly so, but I think it's going to take quite a while. I think it'll probably be at least a 5 to 10 year window before that happens, and hopefully Robert's still around to say that. And for everyone going, "Oh, you're wishing death on him," no, he's 82 years old, and when he crosses their
I think
threshold,
it would only happen like that if Kraft was here, to be
yeah,
honest. Because based on this documentary, or this series at least, it became very clear at least that it seemed Jonathan Kraft was not as keen on Bill throughout his whole time here. And I think many of us kind of had that inkling from reports or whatever it was, but to me it just became very clear watching this. Um but Kraft was the one who, the only thing I appreciated about Kraft's candor in this was after the 2019 Super Bowl when he went to Tom and said, because it was a true defensive performance. That was the first time I really felt that this was a compliment towards Bill's coaching at that point.
yes,
We heard the first three, we constantly heard about how it was Bill. I feel like a little bit it was Tom's rise, but it was, Bill kind of picking the best players here and there. In the later years, it was
4 and
all
5
Tom,
with Tom.
a little bit of Bill. That was the one that I felt Kraft really did well in saying, like, no, he won us that Super Bowl because it was a defensive performance. The defense was incredible that game. I feel like it's yesterday. I remember like watching it, and at first I was like, oh, it's a little boring. There's no scoring, because I was still at that point in my life that I was like, I wanted to see a little bit more. But now going back and watching it, it's like, oh my gosh, I can totally appreciate how incredible that game was. And
Well,
when Kraft went to Tom and said, "Hey, we're staying with Bill for this obvious reason," that to me was the first time I truly felt that Kraft was like not playing,
either
not
side.
devil's advocate, but he wasn't like, he had picked a side for 20 years, and it was the first time that he was looking at things with a clear mind. It wasn't because because he looked at Brady as a son and all this, and Bill was just the coach. That was all Bill was to him for
Yeah.
so long. This was the first time he was like, I'm an NFL owner. At least throughout this documentary, that's how it felt. Like, I know he's done that before. I'm not, Kraft's a great owner. Like, none of this would be possible without his hirings and all that. Like, I am a fan of Kraft, don't get me wrong, but just throughout this, it definitely felt that it was a hit piece on Bill. I do agree with those opinions, and it was putting Brady on that pedestal. But for once, it was the other way around, where it was, no, I can't go without my coach. He's the one who did this.
That's exactly it, though. That you nailed everything on the head. Where it's just like, because when you look at that 2018 Super Bowl, remember the first play of the series of the game, Tom threw an interception. When you look at it, I don't know if they win if Jason McCourty doesn't knock the ball out of Brandon Cooks'
Yeah.
hands. The Stephon Gilmore interception, just the ability to, and even Sean McVay said, like, I think it's on record too, of that was the first time that we went and like we were stymied. You
I have
know,
chills thinking about the Gilmore interception. You just said that, and I like remember watching that in a documentary. Like, oh my god, reliving that moment was everything.
the one thing I wish they had done too with that 2018 season, instead of focusing on this whole, oh, is it Bill, is it Tom, is the fact that that year there was no easy. That was the year they weren't supposed to get there.
Yeah.
2018, like I remember this vividly. Week 1, they barely got by Houston, but then week 2, they got killed in Jacksonville in the heat. They were embarrassed on Sunday Night Football by Matt Patricia, which, you know what, would have been fun to see. And one thing, I hate doing this, is the only moment I was actually visibly ever been like angry after a loss was the Miami Miracle. Like, talk
Yeah.
about that, where it's like, hey, why did Gronk play that game? Why did this happen? And then even how they basically had to win out the regular season after losing to Pittsburgh the next week just to get this 2 seed. And then I remember that Charger game was the first time where we truly saw pissed off Tom Brady, where it was, the entire that was the because when I look at that season as a whole, that Charger playoff game, the Chargers game and the Chiefs game were the two games where you can look at them and go, both men were responsible for
Yeah.
this. Tom Brady had the game of his life. Bill Belichick saw, hey, they're going to run man and zone defense the entire time. We're going to carve you up. We're going to make it hell for Philip Rivers. They held Mahomes to no points in the first half, or I believe it was just 7 points in the first half. Hell, Philip Dorsett caught an amazing touchdown in that game. And even still, I know everyone likes to talk about, what D Ford offside, or the muffed punt thing that Julian Edelman will go on record by saying he never touched. But like Tom Brady was just like, it's like, where it's like, now you're about to watch a master at work. That was Tom in that overtime.
Yeah.
But everyone likes to focus on, but Mahomes couldn't beat him.
No.
And the other thing that Super Bowl, I
I
still
kind of
say,
look at that now as like the Josh Allen Mahomes thing, where it's like
yes,
Josh Allen is so elite, he's so good, but he's yet to get past Mahomes. That was Tom and Mahomes for so long. Like Mahomes was incredible. He was his quarterback, but he could never get past Tom.
the one thing I also want to think about too with that year is my dad's about he's going to hear this. But what happens if they play the Saints in that Super Bowl and we get Brady versus Breeze in Atlanta? That's just the thing to think about, where it's like does he able to stop? Because remember, it was like when you think peak New Orleans Saints post Super Bowl, it was that season where because I remember that Saints season where Alshon Jeffrey had the ball go through his hands, Marshawn Lattimore game winning pick. Obviously, the missed pass interference call. But then that year too, because of this whole thing, is Brady going to get 6? Drew's going for number 2. It's just this, like there's so, I hate doing this with the NFL, but there are so many what ifs for that, to where that it just is what it is. But then with the documentary after Tom left, the part that I really hated, where it was, hey, Brady wins the Super Bowl, and then they show the one visible clip of Belichick getting pissed off and whipping the phone. I think it was against Buffalo, where it's just like, and then he did this and this and this, where I feel like now with Patriots fans, a lot of them are starting to realize, like, hey, we're back to here, and there's a large portion of the NFL world that if we never win another championship again, no one's going to bat an eye.
They'll be thrilled.
Yeah.
I think I was like writing a piece today about, because with Devin McCourty and Rodney Harrison's comments today, there was one by Kyle Van Noy that he put out. Let me quickly find it. That basically was, here we go.
Yeah.
He was doing a Q&A. I guess he was like waiting for a flight, so he was like, ask me questions on Twitter, and I'll answer them. And one was, were you asked to be interviewed for the Dynasty doc? And he goes, no, I wasn't. And I was mad annoyed at first, but I'm glad they didn't, because it looks trashy now.
The other one with that too is like no Hightower at all.
No Hightower. Like there were so many. And again, this is the part where it's like, we had the Putin story, we had the Trump story, we had the TB12 commercial. Like all of that could have been eliminated, and we could have heard from like so many other players. And I think that was kind of like the hope for a lot of people, was to hear that, and it just wasn't done. I think another person after this question asked Van Noy if he had like seen any of it actually, and he goes, like 2 episodes. Like, and this is a guy who was like crucial for a lot of this time. Like he was on the team, he was part of that. He got 2 Super Bowls with them. Like, to only watch 2 episodes of something that you were such a large part of is baffling, but it makes sense, because I get why these players are annoyed. Like, as much as I love Dante Stallworth, but I think there were some times that we didn't need to hear from him as much.
A little too much Stallworth.
A little too much, and it was there were some players that they really shined a light on, and I think the earlier episodes were really well done. Those, I think, when it was truly a clean slate for everyone, when it was talking about the team as the team.
Yes.
Before Tom Brady was like, after that third, going into that third Super Bowl, yes, he was on this pedestal, whatever it was, but it did feel like they were truly a team. It wasn't about Bill and Tom. It was, about everyone. Those were really well done. I think it started to fall down episode 7 and on,
Yes.
when it became too much about, which it was a huge storyline, this bad dynamic. But it's like, even with that bad dynamic, how many Super Bowls did you win? Like,
That,
there were so many players who won other Super Bowls who deserved the opportunity to talk and didn't get that. And yeah, that was just mine. I give him credit for the Spygate episode was well done. I think the handling of the Aaron Hernandez episode was, considering how harsh of a topic that is, I think that was well done. And I even don't think they did a terrible job with Deflategate when it was talking about Deflategate. But when things transition to talk about those other things, that's when it goes downhill.
that's exactly it. Because like the first few episodes, like hearing from like Lawyer Malloy, hearing from Willie, from Mike Vrabel, Teddy
Loved it.
Bruschi, Ty Law,
Vrabes
and
wasn't
also
in this one, right? I don't think Vrabel. We didn't hear from Vrabel. I don't think.
I don't think I think it was like a little clip. I don't think it was too much. I think he was it was episodes. It was 1 to 4 somewhere in there. But
Okay.
even to like the offensive lineman that was Tom's college roommate and the Tecmo Bowl
Oh,
stuff. I'm blanking on his name. Like and also to the fact they gave Drew Bledsoe his flowers.
yes.
Ernie Adams, just him coming back. It's just
Yeah.
he's like it's like that. Like I know this would be really weird to say, but it's like that like adorable old man thing with him, where it's just like this guy who knows so much about football for years. We're always wondering who is he. Hey,
But you
here's
also
Ernie
want to run
Adams.
through a wall for him, like especially in those early episodes when he's
Yeah,
talking. You're like, oh my god, this guy's awesome.
I'm driving like and also too talking about like oh I'm driving in like my like 1996 car when
Yeah.
he easily could afford a better car. It's just like that's a true football guy stuff right
Learning
there.
about
Where
Tom when he was living in Ty Law's old was a house or condo or whatever it was,
yeah,
with like the with the roommates or whatever, like that to me was so fun to hear about
like
Tom
did you
before
know
he was Tom.
Like, did you know that if you smash your foot hard enough, it's going to reset the Nintendo when you're losing a Tecmo Bowl? Like things like that. Like
That
even,
was awesome.
but
Though
like,
that's the part of the dynasty like I'm going to remember. And
but
that's what was done so well.
and even my favorite. I still think my favorite scene from the entire thing was when Tom Brady, Lawyer Malloy, and Ty Law are out for dinner, and he's like, "I'm carrying this team on the way." And they're like, all right, Rook." Like to him, you're have to be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Everything's fine, everything's this. But then to them, it's like, "All right, Rook. All right, Rook." Like like it's like in their heads, they're like, "Yeah, there's no way this guy's doing this. Let's see what this Rook does." And then carries them there. And then the thing with this whole dynasty too is, and like there's all this with football as well, where there's so much of like butterfly effects to where it's like one little change in time can like change like everything that happened. Like,
Yeah.
for as much people like to say, oh, they won the first Super Bowl because apparently they had the plays, or the second one there's no excuses. But then like how number 4, like even getting to hear Malcolm Butler's whole thing of like,
Yeah.
hey, he's looking over here a lot. Like I said, I stood up and applauded when they did the Malcolm Go segment. If I have to give this whole dynasty rating all 10 episodes, I would say like a 7, like it's not, it could have been a lot better. I didn't view it as terrible because I knew we were not going to get 10 episodes of the Patriots are the greatest, the Patriots are the best, 20 years of excellence and dominance. But I feel like a lot of people thought we were going to get that. That's why I say that. But all in all,
Yeah.
I feel like too it was very done for non-Patriots fans, like the ones who want to see the peel behind the curtain in the bad way as compared to the good way of it.
But I don't think then it was advertised right, if that was the meaning behind it. Because my thing with it is that it was, the Dynasty book was, yes, it went over the hard times, but I also feel like it was in some ways a celebration. This felt nothing like I said that,
Book was
but
better than the movie.
yeah, 110%. I mean, that's always the case, guys. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But and as you can see, I'm a reader, so I always think books are better than the movies. But my issue, I guess, with it was like, I do think when you win 6 Super Bowls, you deserve your flowers, and I think those were given in some of the earlier episodes. But that Atlanta comeback Super Bowl, and that Super Bowl specifically, I think it was done fairly well. But you talk about everything, the way that I think about it, the way the first episodes were done. I'm having trouble kind of like putting this into words. I almost wish they used some of that for that Atlanta Super Bowl, the comeback one, because that was a historic moment. I like those. That's like a New England fan. Like we all remember where we were when. Like, I can visualize that whole game in my mind and replay, like, where I was, who I was with, the conversations that I was having, things like that. And at that point in the documentary, it was really that was when it started to get a little more negative.
Yeah.
I do just wish I get that it's not going to be all, sunshine and rainbows. Like that, no football team is ever all sunshine and rainbows.
No.
However, that being said, I do think it took too negative of a spin, and that the interviews that started to come out towards the end were way, way too negative. I do wish that it was a little bit more of a celebration rather than almost like a complete, towards the end, it really was like a dig at one person. And it didn't, besides that one comment I mentioned, because, I was looking back at my notes and there was a comment Kraft made where it was, because of the benching of Malcolm Butler against the Eagles. That's, everyone's like, that's why we lost that Super Bowl.
And I don't like to say that.
Again, and that's how I feel. It's a what if situation. Malcolm Butler
if Zach Ertz was ruled down, what if Corey Clement was ruled out? I can go on for days about that Super Bowl.
Exactly. There's so many what ifs. And I think Malcolm Butler should have played. I don't necessarily agree with the call, but I don't know if Kraft saying it's 100% on him for that Super Bowl.
But even to like the stuff where it's just like, like Danny Amendola, who obviously is very critical of Bill, just this whole like, but he threw for this many yards in a loss and we still lost. How was that? Like people don't remember Tom Brady was strip sacked on like one of the very last plays of the Super Bowl. This wasn't like a New York Giants situation where it was, because if this was like a New York Giants situation, where it was he missed the throw, then you can do that. But for as good a game Tom Brady had, Atlanta just was a step ahead. Atlanta, there's a reason why Atlanta
Eagles, right? This would be the Eagles.
I'm getting my birds mixed up. It's been a long week. It's the mixing up of birds here, folks. But like with Philadelphia, they ran the Philly special because even to like with Super Bowl 51, because we can do that. It's the same thing where what's the one play that was showcased a lot and was getting ready to be front and center on the cover of the Boston Globe? Tom Brady falling down after Robert Alford slipped by him on his way to the house for a pick six. Because I even remember seeing a documentary about that where they interviewed all the writers. Like Doug, that's where I first discovered Doug Kaya, because they interviewed them basically where it was like Atlanta Falcons reporters for like I think it's the Journal Times like in Atlanta, or the Journal Time Constitution, and you have Kaya, who I think was still with Nesson or the Globe at the time. I'm not too sure, probably Nesson. But then like how they're saying like, hey, we have all these stories done, and how they have this on a dime just drop it because look at what the Patriots are doing. Like even how I mentioned, so how everyone likes to talk about Malcolm Butler and Tom Brady with Super Bowl 51 and 49? Dante Hightower is a sole responsible reason for winning those two Super Bowls. 51 strip sack, I say that. Without that, they don't win the game. And 49, he is the one who tackled Marshawn at the 1 yard line. Not a lot of people pay attention to that.
That is very, very true. I knew it, but forgot about it in the moment when we talk about it.
And it was just a play call of all of a sudden of like, hey, he got him down, and they figured, I guess what went through Seattle's head was, he couldn't get in the first time, he's not going to get in the second time. Even though I feel like if second down was incomplete, they're probably running it up the middle again with Marshawn. But that's neither here nor there because it was 9 years ago, and the Patriots won that Super Bowl in all its glory. But let's end on a positive note, because obviously we're talking about the Patriots in the draft. And I saw you wrote an article about Gerard Mayo's strategy going into the draft. So if you want to touch on a little bit more of that for viewers, listeners, wherever you're getting this podcast, where do you think Gerard's truly going with this?
Yeah, I mean he's emphasized quarterback is a priority. That being said, there's one part about it. Listen, we know that there are 3 quarterbacks who are most likely going to go off the board with the first 3 picks. I think, and I said them earlier. It's Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May.
Yep.
What he alluded to, I almost felt like, was like maybe one of those isn't the right fit for the Patriots. I'm not sure. It was just like, if the fit's not there, then we're going to look elsewhere, or we're going to, consider other options. And that's what confused me, because I think anyone, and again, I don't know, I'm not a GM, probably for a very good reason, but I think any one of them could be a very solid opportunity, especially, you have a veteran in the room, Jacoby Brissett. I actually like keeping Bailey Zappi on the roster because he's someone who's been in the room for a few years, whereas Brissett's coming back in. Zappe kind of knows what's been done the past few years. And I also like that he spent so much time working with the receiver room. I think having him as like a practice squad quarterback is the way to go for him this year. And having the opportunity to elevate him with injuries and all that. I'm still a little bit on the Zappe train, not as a starter or anything, but I like him on the Patriots. I always have. I think
Pretty
he's
classic case of emergency.
yeah, that's what I like about him. I think
Or you play in the AFC North.
I'll get that on a t-shirt.
Joe Montana against the AFC North.
There you go. So basically he alluded to it seems to quarterback is the main priority, but he's also not ruling out a trade. He actually told, I think it was Mike Reese put that out recently, that he's not ruling out that. And there, anything's on the table right now going into the draft. I think the most likely outcome is that third pick rolls around and the Patriots have a new quarterback. That is the most likely situation. But as we know in football, anything is possible. And listen, if the Patriots get an offer for that third round pick that they can't turn down, I mean, there would be situations where a team's going to come to them with this like once in a lifetime offer because they need that pick. Then it's something to consider. Because there's Michael Penix Jr., there's Bo Nix. There are quarterbacks that are expected to fall down a little bit who could be solid options going in.
There's also Joe Milton, who, to quote Alex Barth, if you need Joe Milton to throw it 80 yards, he's going to throw it 80 yards. If you need him to throw it 5 yards, he's still going to chuck it 80 yards.
80 yards.
I heard on this very podcast, too, he said that. But the way I look at that whole thing is, out of all the options that are below the 3, Michael Penix Jr. is my number 1. Yeah. He is my he is my QB4 in this draft. Mm-hmm. I know because I know JJ McCarthy's done this. I know he's done that, but like what this talent from Michael Penix Jr. is, and also too what he did in the Sugar Bowl, because I feel like everyone looks at the national championship for him and goes, "Oh, he did this." If you look at his Sugar Bowl film, and they had lost that game to Texas, I guarantee you he's going in the top 10. Guarantee you. Some GMs go look at that film and go, he's doing this, but because they played in the championship, because they didn't have the best game, and he was getting just ragdolled around the entire time, it is what it is. My more intriguing thing for the Patriots is round 2 and 3, because round 4 is just kind of you're able to fill in the cracks. There's not going to be anything of need. It's going to be, hey, get another tight end, get a swing tackle you can maybe play, because and I'm blanking on his first name, but Okafor, I don't know if he's going to be the starter at left tackle, but he's there for depth. But my whole thing
he's primarily played at right tackle his whole career. He's more of a right tackle but obviously Michael Onwenu is going to be your right tackle going into the season.
Yeah.
I think it's going to, I think drafting they're going to have to take a tackle at some point because there's not really any free agents still available for left tackle. But worst case, I mean, if you work on him all throughout training camp as a left tackle, I do think by the season he could potentially be ready. And there was one thing Trent Brown said about that I love, which is the versatility of being able to play at either spot. I think is actually a very important thing for tackles. So it'd be really cool to see that happen.
Yes, exactly. Like my other thing too with it is just like for day 2 and day 2, my goal for day 2 is like, look, get out with a wide receiver because there's still going to be a wide receiver available. We've seen a lot of good ones going around too. And there's also Kingsley, who I'm blanking on his last name, from BYU.
I can't. His last name's long. I know it.
It is. But Patrick Paul from Houston's the other one I've been looking at because I've been seeing him on a lot of Patriots mocks. Mm-hmm. Because with day 3, like I said, you can do the tight end. You can also take, if they want to double dip a quarterback, if they want to double dip at the tackle position, be my guest. Absolutely. Fill in those gaps. They also have a good amount of depth now at the offensive line with like Nick Vannett coming in. Jake Andrews, like I'm not rooting for him, but like I really need to see him take that next step because I was saying this right now, if David Andrews was retired, I would have been banging the drum to get Mitch Morse on New England.
Yeah.
Not Deion Dawkins duping us and re-signing in Buffalo, where I really wanted him to do that. After I saw that thing, I learned he's a master troll, and he re-signed a deal in Buffalo, where I'm just like, God damn it. But it's the next month is going to be very long. It's going to be just so many speculations. It's going to because the next few weeks is really only for like the true football fan at heart. And what I mean is like listening to updates about like what's going on at the league meetings, what's going on with the owners, what's going on with rule changes. Your average football fan's not going to watch that and go like, oh, what's going on here? But like for the next month whenever you hear something, this is mainly the Patriots fans, and I want to say this. Whenever I refer to a fan base now, I always say Twitter or
Yeah.
or X. For Patriots Twitter out there.
Mhm.
You're going to see a lot of different takes. You're going to see a lot of different opinions. But at the end of the day, all I ask for you to do is whatever happens, just trust the process of what's going on. It's going to take a while. The season's not going to be fun. But you know what? Maybe they surprise some people. Maybe it's this magical thing that happens, like me watching Grand Canyon right now, potentially beating Alabama. You just don't know what's going to happen. It's a very love-hate relationship with this time of the year, if I'm being honest with you, where it's just like at this point, it's just like, look, once the league meetings are done, once Easter's done, just get me to the draft.
Yep. Couldn't have said it any better myself.
Just take everything with a grain of salt. That's all I ask. Just you see, like when people are reporting, I'm like, oh, the Patriots could trade back, or oh, like they might do this, they might do that. There are so many smoke screens that are thrown out this time of year because every GM's trying to throw off the other one to what's going to happen. And I'll say the same thing for you as well. It would have to be a offer where there's at least 2 firsts and a player coming at a player of significance of a position of need coming back to the Patriots, in my opinion, in order to trade that pick. They're not just going to do what the Chicago Bears did, because they're not in that position now to where next year, hey, there's this promising young quarterback because look, Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel are the first two that come to mind, and Quinn Ewers, they're not what this year's top 3 is. So if you have faith in this year's guy, just shut up and take it.
Preach.
But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up here for YWC Football Talks 288th episode. One quick announcement, like I said, guys, we're going to be off for a little bit. We will be back next week, but more wrestling related because obviously it's that wonderful time of the year. WrestleMania is right around the corner. But for football, we're going to be back in a couple weeks, so just stay tuned for then. But for myself, A to Z Sports, Miss Sophie Weller with 2 E's and 2 R's because 1 E and 1 R was taken. See you guys next time here. All right? Take care, and remember,